On Tuesday, Al Jazeera's Avi Lewis sat down with Susan Rice, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. A few moments ago, I spoke to Avi from the UN in New York.
Well, you know, it's an extremely important moment for the Obama administration. It's a fascinating time to sit down with the ambassador. Not only are they dealing with the Afghan elections, but they're rolling out the Obama doctrine in a series of carefully orchestrated high-level speeches over the last few weeks. People from Hillary Clinton to Defense Secretary Robert Gates to Susan Rice have been making speeches that are designed to sort of establish the Obama doctrine in foreign policy. And it's the broad outlines of it are that it's a new era of engagement. The U.S. is back in the world community in terms of multilateralism, and the Bush era is over. The problem is that the first test of this new rhetoric is the elections in Afghanistan. And with all of the violence and uncertainty and car bombings, you know, it doesn't look all that new at all. But Ambassador Rice was determined both to present Obama's Afghanistan policy as a genuinely fresh start and to declare the elections a stunning success. Here's some of our conversation.
It was the first election that the Afghan authorities have run themselves. It's the first election in which their own security forces provided security. 95% of the polling stations opened. Of course, we're concerned about allegations of fraud. We take that very seriously, as do the Afghan authorities. Fortunately, the Independent Electoral Commission and the Electoral Complaints Commission are established and able to investigate those allegations, and we will look very much forward to their findings.
The Independent Election Commission is only so in name. All 7 members were appointed by President Karzai, and the head of the commission has made no secret of his political support for Hamid Karzai. So there are questions not just on the electoral level, but on the systemic level, aren't there?
No, we think that the institutions that have been set up by the Afghan authorities to make sure that the elections were conducted and will be reported as credibly as possible are more than adequate. We should not lose sight of the fact that this was a milestone in the democratic development of the people of Afghanistan, that 95% of the polling stations opened. People were able to vote across the vast majority of the country.
But in the critical areas, there were serious problems. I mean, let's take Helmand Province, which is a significant part of the country. You had 12,000 U.S. troops there, 6,200 troops from the U.K. 13 British soldiers have died there in the last month trying to secure the environment for the elections. And according to the local head of the so-called Independent Election Commission, voter turnout was as low as 8% in Helmand Province. Isn't that a colossal failure? I mean, seriously.
No. As you pointed out, we don't know what turnout was, and we won't know until the votes have been tallied and the results come in. Obviously, turnout varied dramatically across the country. There were parts of the country where turnout was very high. Helmand Province, as you well know, is the most insecure province, and it's not at all surprising that turnout there was among the lowest. But we can't say with any precision, nor can you, what the numbers are. We have shifted our strategy, and we have a comprehensive civil-military strategy that is not only predicated on what we can do through the security side of the equation, but also supporting the development of proper and transparent and effective governance that can serve the needs of the people of Afghanistan, and as well as economic development, social services, developing agriculture, health, education, all of that which is essential.
But again, I mean, it seems to be backfiring in the early going. You've got thousands more troops in there, and the UN, again, in its latest report, says that operations carried out by the government of Afghanistan and its allies have resulted in rising toll of civilian deaths and injuries, destruction of infrastructure, including homes and assets.
If you read the UN report, they will point out that the vast majority of civilian casualties are a consequence of the actions of the Taliban and other extremists.
But comparing your record to that of the Taliban, isn't that a...
no, let me finish the thought, because you were implying, I think falsely, that the bulk of these civilian casualties were the consequence of U.S. or coalition activity.
That was true a couple of years ago, and the numbers have changed.
They've changed quite dramatically. Now, are people suffering? Are the Afghan people dying? Are American forces and NATO forces dying in higher numbers? Yes. And all of that is tragic. They are dying not because of the fact that they're there in larger numbers. It's a consequence of the fact that the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and its extremist allies are stepping up their efforts to disrupt the elections, which was their intention. They didn't succeed. And they are trying to put additional pressure on the coalition to give up.
Avi, the Obama administration says it has a combined strategy to deal with Afghanistan and Pakistan together, in fact, referring to them as AFPAC. What did Ambassador Rice tell you about the U.S. strategy in Pakistan?
Well, I actually put to her the results of that extraordinary Al Jazeera poll from earlier this month that found that Pakistanis feel in huge numbers that the United States is the greatest threat to their nation, not the Taliban. 59% identifying the U.S. as the greatest threat versus only 11% for the Taliban. And I wanted to get her reaction to that because there's no question that these unmanned predator drone attacks into Pakistan from Afghanistan and reportedly from a base in Pakistan as well, there's no doubt that that's a huge reason for the feelings of hostility in Pakistan towards the United States. The weird thing is that this is one of those policies that the U.S. administration has never acknowledged officially exists. It's like Israel's nuclear weapons. Everyone knows that the drone attacks are happening, but they don't actually admit their existence. So I tried to get the ambassador to confirm or deny the policy of drone attacks, and well, here's what happened.
I'm not going to get into operational matters, but what I will say is this. The United States is working in partnership with the Pakistani government to deal with a shared challenge that Pakistan faces and that we face, and that is the threat from Al-Qaeda and extremists that are killing Pakistanis every day in extraordinary numbers in some very high-profile attacks, and that continue to plot and plan to kill Americans, to kill Europeans, to kill Canadians, and many others. This is something that we have an obligation to deal with in the interests of the people of Pakistan, as well as in our own interests, in the broader global interests.
But you know that these drone attacks are highly controversial. The United States has never even admitted that it's doing them. Can you confirm or deny for us that the United States is launching predator drone attacks?
I just said I'm not going to get into operational matters, but I will say that we continue to cooperate effectively with the government and the people of Pakistan to deal with this shared threat. We are doing so through a variety of means, and they are essential to achieve the overarching goal of disrupting and dismantling and defeating Al-Qaeda and denying Al-Qaeda a continued safe haven in Pakistan or Afghanistan.
Avi, President Obama has been compared by some of his fans to President John F. Kennedy. He was a young, charismatic president determined to take the country in a different direction. Lately, though, many people have been making a different comparison to Lyndon Johnson. Now, LBJ had sweeping plans for reform, for fighting racism, for eliminating poverty, but he became fatally bogged down in the war in Vietnam, and the war essentially wrecked his long-term plans for a great society. What do you think of the parallels there between LBJ and Obama?
Well, I mean, it is the new line here in the United States that Afghanistan may be Obama's Vietnam. I think it's a critical moment in the presidency, and I think that what you see on the domestic front as he's been trying to get some kind of healthcare reform through. Of course, there have been virulent attacks from the right wing in the United States, but what's happened just in the last week or so is that significant numbers of Obama's supporters, and you're reading it in progressive columnists like Paul Krugman in the New York Times, who have been big supporters of the president, have started to say his supporters who worked so hard to elect him are starting to see the health care reform go the way of all legislation in the United States, written in backroom deals by the corporations that benefit from it. And people are starting to ask in the United States, I worked so hard for this president, where's the change that I worked so hard for? I think on the international stage, Obama hasn't really made his definitive debut. That will happen at the UN General Assembly here in New York next month, and he will cap off this launch of the Obama Doctrine with his grand foreign policy statement. The question is how long the honeymoon lasts. And I think we've seen some convincing evidence that it's starting to come to an end, even among his supporters in the United States. People can't live on rhetoric alone. And when the United States is judged on its actions and not the rhetoric, there's a lot of continuities with the Bush administration. You can see it even in the policies around detention and rendition, which is still going on, the president's state secrets privilege, which is invoked to squash cases, Bagram prison in Afghanistan, where it's being called the new Guantanamo because prisoners there have no habeas corpus rights. So at some point, we've got to see the actual change. Now, he inherited a huge mess, and obviously it takes time to turn around. Afghanistan is not going to be stabilized quickly. The question internationally is how much honeymoon room there actually is, and that's what we're going to find out.
And that was a conversation with Avi Lewis, the host of Al Jazeera's Fault Lines program. We spoke just a short while ago on that subject.